and welcome. If I could ask you to take your seats. My name is Brian Finley. I'm the president and CEO here at the Stimson Center, and it is a great pleasure for me to welcome you all here to Stimson for what is our fourth annual Voices from Japan event here at the center. This series, to my mind, a series of events and dialogues that occurs every year around this time, is really, I think, a unique opportunity to shed some light and really shine the spotlight on a strategic relationship with this country that is, I think, while extremely important, is often, I think, poorly understood, and oftentimes not given the stature in this town, in the cacophony of security and strategic dialogues that occur. As this administration, the administration indeed that brought us the strategic pivot to Asia draws to a close, and we prepare to welcome a new president here to Washington in the new year, I think the moment is really propitious for us to have this sort of discussion. And we have today three very special speakers and participants to help us do that. But before we introduce those, I want to introduce and quickly hand the floor off to the woman who is the brainchild behind this series and those that came before it, Yuki Tatsumi. Yuki is Senior Associate here at Stimson, as well as being the Director of our Japan program. And without further ado, Yuki, may I hand the dais off to you.
So I think I'm going to, at this point, good morning, I'm going to ask Dr. Watanabe, Mr. Nishi, and Mr. Lambert, if you can please join me to the stage. Good morning. My name is Yuki Tatsumi. I'm a Senior Associate here at Stimson Center, directing the Center's Japan program since 2004. It's a great pleasure to see you all. Thank you so much for coming to this first in the Monday morning event. I see your commitment to this issue set right here, and I'm especially privileged to have these three gentlemen this morning with me on the stage. These gentlemen need hardly any introduction, so I'll just go very quickly. To my immediate left is Honorable Masanori Nishi. He last served as Vice Minister of Defense and currently serving still as the Special Advisor to the Defense Minister. Left to him is Dr. Hideaki Watanabe, who's the first Commissioner of the Ministry of Defense of Japan's newly established Acquisition, Logistics, and Technology Agency. So these two gentlemen will start off with his opening remarks, and following their remarks, I turn to Mr. Brett Lambert, who's a wonderful member of the board of the Stimson Center, but he also wears a hat as the Vice President for Strategy, Vice President of Corporate Strategy at the Northrop Grumman Corporation. And previously, he served as the Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense for Manufacturing and Industrial-Based Policy, and in that capacity, he works very closely with the Undersecretary of Defense, Frank Kendall, and on the host of issues that has to do with the industrial base in the U.S. industry. So I'm very delighted to have these three gentlemen. A couple of administrative announcements before we go forward. Our Japanese guests will make their initial remarks in English, but for Q&A, there will be a simultaneous translation. So if you do need that equipment, there are still ear set there right outside of this room. But after this event is over, please do make sure to return this equipment. We're charged for any equipment that we lost. So far we have a good track record of not losing any with this company. So I'd like to be on the good side of this company in a future event as well. And also, you found the note card and a pen on your seat along with your program. Those are for the question and answer session. So as you listen to these three gentlemen, if you have a question pop up in your mind, please do write them down. It's up to you whether you would like to write your name or not, completely up to you. Following the initial remarks, our staff will collect those cards and hand it to me, and I'll try to make the questions, kind of try to group them together to facilitate the discussion among the three. So without further ado, I will turn then to Mr. Nishi.
Okay, thank you very much, Yuki-san. It's really my honor to be invited to join the occasion here. See, I can see many familiar faces, and I'm sure you have expected what I'm trying to say already. So I don't want to disappoint you, but let me do my best. So today, let me discuss something about the afterwards of concluding the new bilateral security guideline in 2015. So let me first mention about the technological development in the post-war era and what Japan considered in this context. With some examples, I want to propose what we can do for tomorrow. That's what I'm going to discuss today. But of course, needless to say, I see things from the Japanese viewpoint, so a bit different from the American perspective. So the first impression I had, the third offset strategy. Naturally, what was the first and the second? Allow my ignorance. It was meaningful to remember what was that. And the first offset was in 1950s, President Eisenhower's days, to deter the superior Warsaw Pact conventional forces in the European front with strategic nuclear weapons. That was quite an effective. The second one was in 1970s, when the Soviet Union was when the Soviet Union was about to achieve the parity in nuclear capability. New ISL platform, precision-guided weapons, stealth technologies, new space-based command and control communication systems, all these, in a sense, familiar technologies for us now, were developed in the context of the second offset strategy. I joined the Japanese Defense Agency in 1978 and have seen developments of all these technologies since then. From the Japanese viewpoint, I have little to say about the first offset strategy, since the Japanese military capability was not meaningful at that time as the ally of the United States. The Self-Defense Force was established in 1954 when I was born, and the Japan-US Security Treaty was updated to the current style in 1960. So the first offset is totally out of consideration. Whereas the second offset strategy, though it was intended against the Soviet Union, worked out very well in the Gulf War against Saddam Hussein in 1991. I am interested in discussing the development of the second offset strategy in the wake of paradigm shift of U.S. strategy starting from the Nixon administration and the Japanese reaction to meet the emerging threat. A series of initiatives were taken by the Nixon administration. There are two important parts. The first one was to revitalize the U.S. economy. The second one was to improve the military strategy against the Soviet Union. Let me explain briefly about these issues for the better understanding of the second offset strategy. President Nixon made two important announcements in the summer of 1971. The first one was on July 15th, that he would visit the PRC. The size of the U.S. military capability designed until that time was expected to meet two major fronts and a minor conflict by that time, namely the Soviet Union and China. It became clear that this goal was not unattainable. Nixon administration redesigned the concept by playing the so-called China card and bring them into one front against namely against the Soviet Union. It was important to remember that China became counted as a power against the Soviet Union. Adding to this initiative, the US requested the burden sharing to the European allies as well as to Japan. The second announcement was publicized a month later. Economic aspect was the target. It made clear that the linkage between the gold and the dollar, namely 1 ounce of gold was $35 at the time, was to be abolished. It was a necessary initiative to stabilize the US dollar against the speculation. These initiatives, now named the Graham Doctrines, were important to revitalize the US economy by cutting the burden of defense expenditure, particularly through finishing the war in Vietnam later. In 1970s was a decade well known as détente. It was also the days of inventing new technologies like the GPS and the Aegis system. It was a decade that Japan modernized its defense plan by designing the first defense build-up outline in 1976 and by concluding the first Japan-US defense guideline in 1978. We, the Japanese side, arranged the guideline to meet the US request of the burden sharing with the concept of materializing the alliance, namely starting to discuss joint operation plans 17 years after upgrading the bilateral security treaty. The outline of the defense buildup was, however, designed based on the understanding that the stable détente period would stay for a while in the future. The Soviet invasion of Afghanistan at the end of the 1970s, therefore, raised a difficult situation for us how to meet the US request of further defense buildup to cope with the fresh Soviet initiative. Allow me to quote my Oxford supervisor's comment on Soviet invasion to Afghanistan. Professor Michael Howard told me that the communism made Russians ignorant. They lost the bitter memory of Anglo-Russian wars on Afghanistan in the late 19th century. The lesson was that Afghanistan was a land where only sheep, goat, and Afghans could survive, nobody else. A poor Japanese student asked a silly question, what about roaches? And the benevolent professor kindly answered me that it might be a little bit too cold even for roaches to live. So my lesson was that don't ask any silly jokes to the masters. Soon we faced a difficult time, the FSX. Following the aborted case of the so-called PSX, the post-P2J ASW aircraft, the Japanese side, both the government and the industry side, was serious to develop the new fighter bomber by themselves. It was a test case, though it was bitter. The alliance, how to promote the cooperation between, in a sense, not equal partners with technological gaps. The more important case was that Japan decided to accept the exceptional case of technology transfer for the missile defense project, so-called three Ps, three principles of arms and non-arms and arms technology transfer, was decided by the Miki cabinet in 1976. Prime Minister Nakasone decided to promote technological cooperation with the United States in 1983 to meet the growing tension of security issues against the Soviet Union. 1980s was the decade of technological issues for Japan to think of the alliance. Sometimes it was bitter and sometimes it was sweet. So, let me back to the topic of the Gulf War. I was amazed to see the great US operation on the ground led by the GPS to surround the Iraqi army in a very short time. The more important issue was that it took more than a month to mobilize tank divisions from West Germany to the front against Iraq. After the war, the United States started to transform the system of ground forces. During the Cold War period, the American military deployment was something like arranging gatekeepers to secure the cage to contain the Russian bear. What became necessary after the Cold War was to have more flexible and mobile units of ground forces that could be mobilized to a particular point to deter the enemy. This is feasible due to the development of technologies of communication, navigation, transportation, and other related technologies. Then the difficult question came out in 2001. The non-nation state became the object of the security policy for the first time in the modern history. Is there any effective way to deter these entities? If we have to use our military capabilities against these entities, would it work well against them? Adding to these questions, we have to face new challenges in a new space, namely cyberspace. Related to the new reality, I have another question. That is a very serious question to myself, and yet I don't have any answers yet. The first and second offset were aiming to the Soviet Union. Then, what would be the object for the third offset for the purpose of national security? I do not deny that Russia and China are becoming the military power, including cyber security issues. However, they are different from what the Soviet Union was in the wake of the Cold War period. China particularly is the second largest economic entity in the world and one of the biggest trade partners for both the United States and Japan. There won't be any all-out war as we hypothesize against the Soviet Union in the Cold War area. What we have to achieve is the technological superiority and the military capability, including the operational maneuverability, to deter hypothetical enemy. At the same time, we have to have a plan to live together with these countries and deter their threat with other means. This will be a difficult question to answer through the new guideline in 2015. Technological development has changed the concept of military operations in many ways in the past. It is meaningful to study the pre-war days before the emergence of nuclear weapons. Each and every strong nation had their own plans, strategies, hypothetical enemies, and weapon systems. Let me introduce, for example, the case of the HMS Dreadnought class battleship. It was launched in 1906 with a steam turbine propulsion system and the new concept of an all-big gun armament scheme, with more heavy caliber guns than previous ships. Different from the compound engine, the steam turbine engine was compact and powerful. It enabled the body of the ship that could carry guns bigger in size and more in numbers with faster speed. Operational requirements invite new concept of weapon systems. Imperial Japanese Navy had a plan to meet the US Navy in the Western Pacific in the 1930s. Submarine, therefore, became important in this operational plan, not only for their reconnaissance in the forward, but to reduce numbers of US ships by torpedoes. This concept finally created the body of E-400 class submarines, 400 feet length and 6,670 tons, the submarine aircraft carrier to bombard the Panama Canal. Chinese DF-21 type missile, so-called aircraft carrier killer, though I am skeptical of its targeting capability, could be the one coming from this operational requirement against the American carrier battle groups. Suffering from the US pressure of two carrier battle groups in 1996, China invested a lot of money for the Navy, Air Force, and the missile unit. We have seen the magnificent military buildup of China last 30 years, while neither Japan nor the US has the fiscal luxury for further military build-up. Maintaining the technological advantage is important for us. Therefore, we have to find the way of cooperation of technologies. The important case to meet this reality is the recent decision to do the repair and maintenance of Marine Corps V-22 deployed in Okinawa by the Japanese side deployed in Okinawa. And the maintenance will be carried out by the Japanese side at Kisarazu City, not very far from Tokyo. There are 24 Marines V-22s. Adding that, Japanese Ground Self-Defense Force decided to introduce 17. And the US Air Force is going to deploy about a dozen of them in Japan in the near future. This is a new style of roles and missions between Japan and the United States that became feasible after DPJ's NODA cabinet decided to modify the arms transfer policy in conjunction with the introduction of F-35. This will reduce the time and cost of transfer of American weapons back to the US. That means improve their readiness. After the Second World War, it is only the United States that has shown the development of strategic thinking continuously. Pentagon has studied many technologies and systems. Some are successful, some are not, sorry. While Japan has experienced many cases of licensed productions of US weapons successfully in the past. The bilateral future technological cooperation can be outlined based on our past experiences of past 70 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Now on to Dr. Watanabe, who will tell us about the Atlas new technological development strategy, from what I understand.
Yeah, thank you for the kind introduction. Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Hideaki Watanabe. I'm the Commissioner of ATLA, Acquisition Technology and Logistics Agency. I would like to thank Simpson Japan Program and Ms. Yuki Tatsumi for inviting me to attend this seminar. By the way, last week I was visiting Fort Worth, Texas to attend the rollout ceremony for the first F-35A of Japan Air Self-Defense Force. It was an impressive event with all of the perfect arrangements and a beautiful showcasing of the new fighter aircraft. During my stay there, I also had a chance to visit Lockheed Martin's 1 Mile factory, which was also wonderful. During the facility tour in the F-35 assembly line, they explained to my delegation that the carbon composite material technology applied in the F-35 production is originally developed by Japanese side. In the F2 project, F2 was a project for bilateral cooperation, and therefore the outcome of the F2 joint program between US and Japan has been passed on until today for the world's most advanced fighter project. When I listened to the explanation, I remembered the time when I was involved in the F2 project as a director of aircraft division, Japan MOD. And I was very glad to see the fruit of Japan-US cooperation in technology is helping for the security as a part of the F-35 program. Let me stop here to talk about my personal feelings and my old story, and move on to today's main topic. And in recent years, we have witnessed the technological innovation advancing quickly. What technology offers means more than ever. Today, incorporating cutting-edge technology into our defense equipment and military operation is an urgent issue. And the Japan-US, therefore, today's seminar, the third offset strategy and the Japan-US alliance is very important and timely matter for our countries. While the US DoD is now promoting the third offset strategy and investing in advanced technology to maintain the current military advantage, ATLA is also making immediate efforts to create a defense technology strategy, DTS for short, to strengthen research and development. I will briefly explain our efforts through the strategy and talk about the possible cooperation between the US and Japan. As you know, the tension in the security environment surrounding the East Asia is now mounting rapidly. China is increasing their activities in the East China Sea and South China Sea and airspace as well. And in addition to it, Russia is continuing to modernize their military activities. North Korea has been developing nuclear weapons and ballistic missiles and escalating its provocative words and actions to a new level. Moreover, China and Russia have been undertaking their R&D on advanced weapons such as anti-ship ballistic missiles, stealth fighters, and UAVs, working hard to fill the technological gap. Under this circumstance, the US has proposed the third offset strategy in order to maintain and even expand technological superiority. Based on the strategy, the US is now promoting game-changing advanced technologies such as high-energy weapons, railguns, autonomous weapons, deep learning machines, and so on. In addition, while we see the rapid progress of technology, the dual-use technology applied in the field of defense now assumes increased importance. Military technology sometimes changes drastically in successfully introducing advanced civilian technologies. Therefore, in order to sustain technological superiority, we now need to implement our R&D programs according to new policies, instead of simply referring to existing methodology. When ATRA was newly established in October last year, our first priority was to secure technological superiority, and we have been engaged in substantial discussions on the Defense Technology Strategy, or DTS, which was finalized and published in August this year. DTS is composed of the following three pillars. First, the technological survey. Second, the development of technology. And third, the protection of technology. Let me explain each with ATRA's related current activities. The first pillar is the technological survey. Survey on the current status and future direction of advanced science and technology, both inside and outside Japan, is necessary. We have drawn up the mid to long-term defense technological outlook describing the future technology, which could be applied to the defense equipment from now to 20 years ahead. This document was discussed and finally published alongside the DTS and helps identify what kind of technology can be future game changers. In the technology outlook, ATRA especially focuses on the following four technology fields. First, unmanned technology. Second, smart and network technology. Third, high-power energy technology. Fourth, improvement on functions and performances of legacy systems. The second pillar is the development of technology. In the development of defense technology, ATRA recognizes the importance of the technology cooperation with various organizations, including universities and startup companies. In order to do this, ATRA newly introduced the security-related research funding program in 2015 as a solution. I hope that we can take in various innovative technologies developed by universities, national research institutes, and our companies. We intend to expand this program to deal with basic research projects of larger size by requesting larger budget increase of about this year $100 million. Furthermore, incorporating rapidly growing dual-use technologies such as drones and robots and AI into defense equipment is also very important. we would like to set up an additional new funding program to promote speedy implementation of those technologies. Next, it is very important to formulate a research and development vision describing technological challenges and future R&D roadmap of defense equipment that will be mainstream in a future defense inventory. Publicizing the vision will provide better predictability and understanding for private companies, and we hope that it will lead to more stable and efficient investment for companies. In the year 2010, the vision for the future fighter was published, and this year, Atra published the vision for unmanned systems. We will continue our work to formulate additional visions. The third and final pillar is the protection of technology. It is very important to appropriately protect developed technology. Atra actively works with the Export Control Authority regarding the transfer of advanced technologies, as well as international cooperative programs. As a result, the sensitivity of technology is evaluated properly. This is the brief outline of the new DTS. I believe that the principle of the strategy, such as fostering and utilizing dual-use technology, and then seeking to get game-changing technologies are almost in line with the basic policies of the US. Now let's address the technology cooperation with the US. Japan and the US have been conducting various cooperative research and developments, such as the joint development of the Japanese F-2 fighter, as I mentioned before. Now we are cooperating on SM-3 Block 2A, a joint development program for Aegis VMD ships. Joint research on hybrid electronic propulsion for future combat vehicles, and high-speed march ships for high-speed propulsion on water. The US is now making efforts according to the third offset strategy, and then securing its military superiority. Atra has started to accelerate developing advanced technologies by strengthening Japanese defense technological base through the newly created DTS. I hope some cooperation between the US and Japan will be made in the near future. Mr. Kendall of the US DoD and I have been discussing closely in many important opportunities, including the Systems and Technology, or the SRTF. I'm looking forward to continuing these close ties with the US side and working not only in the R&D field, but also on the equipment and technology agenda as a whole. I hope to see much more progress in our bilateral cooperation. Thank you for your attention.
Now to finish us up.
And now I'm going to get my notes, which I like. Thank you. I first want to say what a great honor it is to be on a panel with these distinguished gentlemen, because my entire career was mostly writing the preparation memos for meetings with these distinguished gentlemen. So I appreciate it very much. I was going to just briefly talk about how, given my experience both in and out of government, how industry plays a role and can play a role in this third offset strategy, particularly as it relates to cooperation with close allies like Japan. And for any discussion like that, you have to understand that there's a difference in the model of our industrial bases. Whereas we have pure prime players in the United States where 80 to 90%, or in some cases 100% of their sales and effort are derived from our Department of Defense. That model is inversed in Japan, where technology leaders in the commercial markets are the ones who are providing the capabilities, but it is not the driving force of those companies. And you have to start with that understanding that there are different business models. Also, the historic relationship, which is, I think, unfortunate, but I think there's an opportunity in learning from it, is the U.S. has historically viewed itself, and companies have viewed themselves as exporters of systems, instead of really developers of systems with our Japanese counterparts. That is changing, and I think third offset strategies really open up a new window and a new opportunity if both governments and industry can walk through that opening door to change the balance of power, if you will, in the relationship between ourselves and Japanese, both the government and companies. That's largely driven, as these gentlemen have articulated, by the changing nature of the global threat, as well as the changing nature of global technology. I used to say when I was representing my old office that the defense industry is more global, it's more commercial, and it's more financially complex than ever before, and that statement is truer today than it was yesterday, and it will be truer tomorrow than it is today. The fact is we rely on an intricate supply chain that is global. It is primarily at the lowest levels commercially derived, because the research and development funds that go into commercial products are so vast and so overwhelm what any defense department, even the U.S. Defense Department, could possibly invest in these rapidly changing technologies. We had a system for many years, I call it the steel to sand system, where all of our products and our procurement systems were set up to buy steel. Ships, planes, tanks. As in the second offset, as we started moving to a more sand culture, silicon-based information technology, all of the things that are articulated not just by what you just said, Dr. Watanabe, about what you're investing in, but also where the commercial world has gone. Our systems, our government systems, have not kept up, and they still buy steel. And we really have to rethink, and I think third offset gives us a real opportunity to rethink how we acquire systems and capabilities to enhance the warfighters and increase security for our respective governments. I think when you look at Japanese industry and the innovations, they're very well aligned, as you pointed out, autonomy, artificial intelligence, robotics. All of these things are articulated clearly in the third offset strategy, and there are tremendous opportunities, I believe, for both the U.S. government and U.S. industry to align itself with developments and capabilities that the Japanese companies have to offer. So when I think about what needs to happen next, there are structural barriers. There's intellectual property barriers, there are contractual barriers, but those are what frustrates me when I was both in government and in industry and going back and forth is that the structural barriers are really the easiest ones to think about and to solve, but they're the hardest ones to implement because of history, because of inertia of bureaucrats on both sides. Breaking through those barriers, if we focus on not necessarily the wall, but the bricks in the wall, so whether it's IP, whether it's security, whether it's the cyber security and resilience that's going to be important for every product that both countries manufacture for security. Those are the issues that I think they're not glamorous, they're not sexy, but they are the fundamental building blocks that would ensure a successful cooperation on third offset between both the countries and I think the industries of both nations. So I will leave it there.
Thank you, Brett. Now I think we'd like to move on to Q&A, but from here, if you do need to put on your simultaneous translation earpiece, please do so, and then if you do need one and don't have one, if you can quickly raise your hand so that our folks back there can try to get it to you. And obviously, once we start this conversation, when you ask, I will try to be mindful that there are two wonderful simultaneous interpreters so that I don't go too fast. And then also, let me take the privilege of the moderator to ask the first question, and in the meanwhile, these gentlemen reply to my question. There will be people collecting the cards, so if you can flag them with your card, someone will come and get it to you. Get it from you, and then bring them to me. So, I guess my first question, I think what I thought, Brett, what you said toward the end was very interesting. That there's structural differences are relatively easy to identify, but harder to implement. I would also like to pose each of you what your thought is about the cultural differences of the both government and industry when it comes to problem solving. One of the barriers that I often hear from my friends from the industry and also from the government in both countries are that fundamental cultural shift needs to happen. And I think it kind of relates to what you said earlier, Brett, about the how U.S. industry has seen itself primarily as an exporter. But then I think for the U.S. DoD as well, our Pentagon see ourselves as the exporter of our own systems, not so much as importer of our allied system or joint developer of a system. So, and then in Japan, I think Japanese industry have seen themselves as basically building what precisely is told by the Ministry of Defense or Self-Defense Forces in terms of operational requirements and capability requirements and so forth. And as they try to harness the opportunity that can be offered by third offset, both of those cultures needs to change. So I would like to get each of your reaction on that issue. And in the meantime, if you haven't given anyone a card, please.
I can start by culture is hard. It's harder than technology in many ways. Understanding the framework from which the leading Japanese technology companies operate, which is primarily from a commercial mindset, that's different than the U.S. industry or U.S. defense industry has traditionally operated. So there's that barrier you have to break through. I think one of the opportunities that third offset provides is that many of the same capabilities and technologies that are being pursued in the third offset strategy have vast commercial applicability at vast commercial markets, and where they have unique security implications or capabilities. That would be appliqued over the capabilities that would be being pursued for commercial activities. And I think that's where the secret sauce would come in from companies pursuing uniquely defense-related products. But it is hard. It is. I had a rule in my office that it took me a year to develop. In that, we were a coordinating office in the Pentagon, and so we had to get a lot of coordination with a lot of other offices. And I would get an edict to do something from either Mr. Kendall or Dr. Carter, and I would try to do it, and inevitably it would get stalled in the bureaucracy. And so we created a rule that my office could not say no to any request from another office. They could only say yes. And if they wanted to say no, they had to bring the issue to me, which most people didn't want to do because they knew what my answer was going to be. And we changed that culture, and we started moving a lot more things through the office just because it's easy to say no. It is really hard to say yes. People have to work, and they have to coordinate. And I think that's kind of the cultural change that will need to happen on both the government and the industry level.
はい。じゃあ、ここまでですね。 私の方からですね、文化的な違いというちょっと難しい話だったんですけども、これはですね、技術とか装備ですね、そういうところに関して諸外国との間の取り組みということについては、我々自身がむしろその、防衛産業というところもそうなんですけれども、私たち自身が変わらなければいけないということで、昨年の10月にアトラというものが設立されたという理解でおります。それはむしろ当時時間だった日産がですね、全て誘導していただいたと思ってますので、そこら辺の情報者のご本人にお聞きいただきたいとは思うんですけども、それ以来ですね、我々自身はいろいろと変わってきたつもりでおります。ただですね、それを伝播させるためにどうしたらいいかということで、今回ですね、その技術戦略、ディフェンステクノロジーストラテジー、それに続く、いくつかの文章をですね、こう出させていただいて、それで、その日本の防衛省における考え方っていうのを産業界にも知らせしめるというふうに考えています。これは研究開発の部分における、その取り組みの仕方ということになりますので、そういったことでございます。それから、海外との共同ということに関しては、これはですね、かなり共同でやはりその、開発をするということが、やはり巨額の投資を一国で賄いきれないということが、ありますので、そういった面でですね、そのような方向にあるということは、だいぶ何度も私どもが申し上げているので、そういう意味で、防衛産業の方もご理解いただけると思っています。ただ、我々はですね、アメリカのその事情と全く違うのは、防衛産業というその、考え方なんですけれども、主に大企業の一部がですね、防衛のことをやっているということでございますので、全体的なものっていう考え方でですね、どういうふうな整理をしていくかというのはまた別のものでございます。ですからコマーシャルの方を受け持っている部分、それから防衛の部門というのがですね、多分考え方はかなり違った形で今までコントロールされてきていると思うんですけども、そこら辺を今後どういうふうに、コマーシャルの方を取り込んでやっていけるかとか、やるべきだと思ってますけど、そういうことを考えています。それからやはり防衛省の予算規模って必ずしも大きくありませんので、我が国の中でもですね、連携っていうものが必要だということを私はいつも申し上げています。当然その、他の、省庁ですね、文部科学省とか経済産業省とかそういうところでやっている、あるいは総合科学会議と言われるものがありまして、そういうところでやっているその、研究開発にしても、そのデュアルユースということで使えるものというのはかなりあると見ておりますので、その成果をいかに活用していくかというのも一つの課題であると思っていますし、そういう方向に、民間の方もですね、一緒になって考えていくということはあろうかと思っています。私からはとりあえず以上。
Mr. Nishi, you maybe have some explanation to do.
I'm not really the man behind the curtain to arrange things. The importance to establish the ATRA is to promote the defense cooperation, technological cooperation, as I pointed out, and Dr. Watanabe endorsed. But also that is related to the difference of the character between the US and Japan. Japanese side, Japanese defense industry, as Dr. Watanabe pointed out, has been done in the context of the civil technologies. Therefore, the good qualities, good management, good production lines, all these are necessary items for civil technology, commercial items, and not really strictly required to the US side for the industry side, for the defense builder. While the US advantage is creating new systems, new images, and that relies on your levels of 3 services. I just pointed out the case of the Aegis technologies, which designed in late 70s to early 80s, but the reality came out in late 80s and early 90s. In other words, it took more than 10, 15 years to be matured, to be out as a real item. And Japan, on the other hand, after the Second World War, has lost this kind of designing the system by themselves. It was partly because of the strong umbrella of the nuclear capabilities. So in the context, I pointed out the E-400 class submarine, which is designed only 1940 by Admiral Yamamoto, and that became clear. And the first ship was completed in 1943, only 3 years after his design, after his image, and then drawn that design, and then completed. And the original target was Panama Canal in order to bombard it and cut the US fleet into the Pacific and the Atlantic. Unfortunately, all these things were not carried out, but at least the amazing thing, and which is, I'm afraid, lost nowadays in Japan, is just have the design, have the imagination, and complete it within only a few years, based on the technologies they have possessed at that time already. So it's really necessary how we can amalgamate our advantages each other. And this is what I think necessary from now on. And how we secure our technologies amongst us, because there are so many cases of robbery of technologies. I don't say who did, but we, not only the US, but also Japan, are suffering from that. So this is something else that we have to pay attention. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have a whole host of questions. All the questions that I got is very informed questions. So it's going to be, there's no software here. So let me start by a little bit specific questions. This goes back, so someone clearly, a lot of you clearly has the Japan's build-up plan calendar in their mind. So one of several of the questions was really focused on how this defense technology strategy will be linked and implemented through the Japan's next 5-year midterm defense planning. And in that, I think one of the important items that will likely to be addressed is what Japan thinks about what Japan calls as F3. So for each of you, and especially for Brett, how do you see the opportunity for this F3 to be whether joint U.S.-Japan, and what type of collaboration is possible? And for our Japanese guests, Mr. Nishi and Dr. Watanabe, more on the Japanese side of how this defense technology strategy and then this new approaches and new thinking, in your mind, needs to be integrated into the process of formulating the next midterm defense planning. So, whoever would like to go first, please.
Well, it's always easier to talk about somebody else's program. I'll go first. So I'm not, I don't claim to be, I'm not a student of our past cooperative agreements other than reading lessons learned, and they don't tend to be all that glowing. And I think so, I think any new start would have to, necessarily has to begin with two premises. The old way of doing this, giving and buying, is not going to work. It has to be truly cooperative at a very base level, and it has to incorporate sharing on both sides at a very fundamental and developmental level, and equal sharing. And secondly, it has to move in a much more directed and rapid process than has been the case. I lived for a long time in Asia, in India, and when I was there in the late 80s, they were about ready to deploy their light combat aircraft. They're still about ready to deploy their light combat aircraft. And I think anything as we look forward to the threats and how quickly the threats move, the need for speed in development and for the rapid insertion of developing technologies, the open architectures, the open insertion you can make are going to be essential for any kind of cooperative development. The good news is, both on the US side and on the Japanese side, industries are prepared to do that. And in many cases, in my experience, it's been governments getting out of the way. So I think there is a real opportunity. Whether we can take advantage of it is still unclear.
Yes, I think I'd better start because I'm already retired and therefore not really responsible for discussing the future defense builder plan. The important thing is we've done so many issues in 2015 and therefore we need time to digest all these difficult questions to answer. The most important thing is related to the peace and the security role, which actually demands the reinterpretation of the Article 9 of the Constitution. In other words, the next 5 years plan, together with the new outline, defense builder outline, should meet this very difficult question, which we raised, with the MOD raised to us, but how we answer to these questions in the concept and then to the defense builder plan. Until now, we have spent a lot of energy to introduce new systems like Global Hawk, new tank, and also V-22 and other items. Therefore, it may take a bit more time for us to digest all these new technologies fitting to our systems. But 5 to 7 years from now, we may be ready to design something new, but not in the quick future due to a lot of homework that what we have to answer. And also related to the F3, so-called F3, I myself is skeptical. It's not very smooth at that designing the F3. Currently, we now start flying the new prototype body of the Stealth and going to fit the new engine that is going to be developed by the Ultra. But that is actually a very important and precious story for us to learn lessons, what the stealth technology is and what the anti-stealth capability could be in the near future. And this will bring us the whole concept, new concept of air defense in general as a big system. Not only the airplane itself, but also the radar system on the ground, AWACS, manned aircraft, unmanned aircraft, and missiles. What important for us is what kind of image of this whole air defense is going to be. And therefore, if there is a chance for us in the future that is related to the possible so-called 6th generation airplane, which I'm afraid, I'm sure that the US is going to make a draft proposal within, say, next 5 years, whether it's manned or unmanned. So this is a challenge, and it will be a long process for us to go. And where we can find the chances of coordination, and where we can find, say, confrontation, is questions to be answered in the future. Thank you.
はい。私の方からですね、今事実関係でもですね、もう少ししっかりと申し上げていきたいなと思ってます。まず最初に、今西参院の方からですねお話があった、実験機なんですけれども、これは X2 と呼ばれるもので、ステルス性とですね高運動性というものをしっかりと確認するというものでございます。でこれをですねコンパクトな機体で作って、それの、その技術の検証を行っているということです。まさに今検証中です。それからですね他にまた機体技術、それからエンジン技術ですね、それについて日本がどこまで努力できるかということをですね、機体についてはより軽量コンパクト、より軽量ですね、それで、 しかもステルス性の高いような材料とかそういうのをうまく用いて、できるのかと、軽量化も一層図る必要があると思ってます。でそういったことに関して作り方も変えていくということを考えています。でそういうチャレンジをしつつですね、それから諸外国の技術がどういうのがあるかということを調べるために今年の7月から8月にかけてリクエストフォーインフォメーションということで、これは世界中の企業に対してですね、質問書を出しています。でこれに対してはぜひですね、前向きに全ての技術をですね、我々に提案していただきたいなというふうに思っております。それを一応いろいろ勘案した上でですね、今のところは2年後ぐらいになると思いますけど、その頃にですね、どういう形で開発を行っていったらいいかということについて考え方を整理していくというプロセスになるかと思っています。今現在また我々がですね、そこら辺考えているところに関しては、F3 ということですね、そういうことに関しては今こういう状況でございます。それから先ほど技術戦略ですね、これのお話ございましたけれども、技術戦略というのはあくまで考え方でございます。ですからこれをですね、すぐに予算という考え方ではないんですけれども、方向性とかいうものをですね、しっかり出してですね、そういったそれから今はテクノロジカルアウトルックっていうその中長期の技術見積もりというものを作りましたので、そこは重点的に投資する分野を、4つほど並べております。そこら辺はですね、先ほど言いましたように企業のですね、将来の予見性とかいうものについてある程度明らかにしていくという意味で意味があるとは思ってますけど、こういったところに我々が重点思考していくということを見つつですね、その提案者側と我々の方がですね、いろいろ協力し合ってより良いものを作っていけばいいというふうに思っております。とりあえず以上です。
Thank you. Another question, another area that there are a lot of questions were in the realm of U.S., not only U.S.-Japan bilateral defense technology cooperation, but what about with including the third country, another U.S. ally, or another U.S. and Japan strategic partner? Australia and India are the countries that comes to mind, and possibly also Republic of Korea. So, as U.S. and Japan thinks about this bilaterally, how do you? I would appreciate each of your views on the prospect of including this third country, any of those other U.S. allies or Japanese and U.S. strategic partners in the mix, as clearly this has to be a shared approach. So I would like I would appreciate your views.
Okay, sure. There will be it will be necessary for us to have the third party adding to the bilateral cooperations. We have started talks with many countries, the UK, Australia, other European countries, Israel. There are chances, but also through these conversations, what we found is their requirements, their requests, their interests are so different each other. Therefore, it may not really be easy to find the common understanding or the consensus that what we are going to build in the trilateral or more than trilateral cooperations. So this will be a challenge. But the first important thing is find the agenda that what we'd like to do between the US and Japan and how far we can share that requirements with third countries. And this will be a very, steady approach for us and for the US too to develop multilateral cooperations in the future. I don't think it can be an easy business to go forward. Thank you.
はい、 私からはですね、その、第三国協力というところに関して言えば、やはり、日米間の協力もですね、その第三国へ対して一緒に行っていく際に非常に良きパートナーであったら良いんではないかというふうに思っています。まだ決まったポリシーをですね、我々が持っているわけではありません。で、例えば ASEAN 諸国に対していかに協力をしていくかということに関しても、日米間の協力というのは一つは欠かせないかなというふうに思っています。一つ最近の事例では、これはちょっと大きなものではありませんが、フィリピンに対してですね、中古機の移転というものをいたしました。中古の飛行空機ですね。でこれはアメリカの方で前ビジネスジェットとして使ってたものをですね、日本側が練習機として使っていて、それの、教育体系が変わったということで、フィリピン側に一応その移転ができるということで、人道支援とかですね、遭難救助とかそういう目的のために、フィリピン海軍の方に移転するということを決めたわけでございます。これに関しても米国側ともいろいろ調整をさせていただいて、非常に米国の方もそれについては賛意を表明されてですね、協力をしていただくということがあります。で我々としてはやっぱりその物の移転にとどまらず、第三国の場合というのはパッケージという考え方をですね、ちょうど米国から教えていただきましたけど、パッケージ支援というのは教育体系ですとか、そういったそのメンテナンス、そういうものを含めてですね、支援体制をしっかりしていくということが重要で、それがやっぱり第三国ということに関して、もちろんアドバンスのカントリーとはまた違ったですね、第三国ですけど、そういったところに関してはいろいろな移転の仕方っていうのはすでに米国の方はいろいろなノウハウを持ち出し、考え方もしっかり整理されていますので、そういったことに関してもいろいろノウハウを、私どもですね、学びながらですね、そういう協力関係を行っていくということが重要だというふうに考えています。
I agree with everything that was said. I just think that you have, in any of these kind of discussions, particularly in an evolving policy in a different threat environment, it's important to step back to first principles, which is why are we cooperating? What is motivating us to stress cooperation or trilateral or more than bilateral? And in the case of U.S. and Japan, that's been well established over the years. As the threat evolves, I'm encouraged by Japanese, both the ship sales, the things that are occurring, I'm very encouraged by with their other bilateral relationships. And I think those can continue to occur bilaterally with either the U.S. or other of their partners. But on the policy level above that, which helps inform those direct relationships, I think there is a strong desire and frankly a strong need from the first principle side to look at areas of cooperation and mutual interest between Australia, Japan, and other nations in the region, and to have that be the overlay in which we operate and continue to do bilateral things, but within that policy context, I think will be important.
Thank you. All of you talked about the importance of, as U.S. and Japan together approach this, working government and industry, working closely together will be very important. And there was a specific question about one of the potential obstacles toward that, which is the information sharing between the government and private sector. And I think traditionally, private industry has been somewhat hesitant to share a certain type of information about, especially about they're happy to share their strength, but because in the eyes of their peer competitor and other reasons, they are not as, I guess, forthcoming to talk about where they can be benefited from actually working with other companies in another country potentially and things like that. So how do you go about this? I think it may go back to another structural/cultural change issue, but because there were these specific questions about how do you tackle these challenges in information sharing between government and private sector. I would just throw it up to you all. Who would like to take it?
Well, it's not really an easy question to answer. We have many difficulties with the industry side too. Also, though it became feasible for us, much more, say, comfortable political environment of the arms technologies transfer, however, the Japanese industry are basically not willing to go out for this business, because for their traditions, arms sales, arms demand are coming from the Japanese government and nobody else. Therefore, the Japanese industry side is wait and see what's coming from the government. I'm sorry to say, nothing is coming from the government for the trade with the outside of Japan. But the important point is, based on this understanding, that GG type of cooperation, government-to-government corporations, if we are going to define the basic understandings of the bilateral corporations or bilateral business chances, the government-to-government understanding is going to be a very important safety net to encourage the Japanese private sectors to go forward. And this will be effective, say, in next 5 years or so, through this government-to-government cooperation approach, and give more chances and flexibilities for the Japanese industry set to understand what the outside worlds are and what the business of arms and arms technologies are. So it may take a time for us how we can have more, say, smooth cooperation with the industry side, with the government. But I'm sure the Dr. Watanabe knows much more detailed issues of this because that's his headache actually.
ありがとうございます。まさに頭痛の種であります。でまずですね、一つはその2つあると思ってます。制度的なものとですね、それからカルチャー的なものとこの2つございます。で、カルチャー的なものっていうのは先ほどお話もあったように、戦後70年間ですね、主に我々が装備品と呼ばれるものは、国内からですね買ってくるということ、あるいは海外から輸入するということになりますので、国内の産業が海外に輸出するということに関しては今までなかったということからですね、制度的なものをそれに伴って、自衛隊以外の差が使用するということを考えてない形になってますので、例えば知的財産とかの所有者っていうものを、ほとんど整理がなされていないということが一つ大きな、障害があります。でここら辺はですね、その整理をしていくっていうことが、まずは基本的なところとして、今後ですねやっていく必要があると呼ばれることがあると思います。でもう一つカルチャー的な問題の方は、これは徐々にですね、やはり、ビジネスとしてそういうものが成立するということに関して民間企業がですね判断しうる根拠がですねちゃんとあれば、その方向に徐々になっていくんだろうと、これは時間の問題かなというふうに思っています。ですからちょっと時間がかかるんですけれども、そういった方向にですね間違いなく、動きはし始めたという段階でございます。これをいかに、今後のですね、非常に激動する中でですね、早いことを変えていけるかというのは、課題だというふうに思っております。
I would just add that there's a lot of lessons here from the commercial world that defense industry can take advantage of. Unfortunately, I never thought I would say this, but that may involve more lawyers. But I do think they're from the pharmaceutical, the computer industry, the information technology issue. They've gotten past a lot of these roadblocks, and the U.S. government, and I think governments around the world haven't kept up that, I think the other important part is companies are leery to share information for a variety of reasons, but one of them, which is kind of the panda in the room that we all dance around, is the theft of property that is no longer in your control. And Cybercom has stated publicly that there's about $350 billion a year of intellectual property stolen from China, from the US. We do about $350 billion in trade, so I call it the buy one, get one free policy. But until we can strengthen our cyber relationship to give assurances to companies with advanced technologies that their technologies and cooperation will not be jeopardized for harm of both nation and industry, I think that is a key area that should be a primary of focus, and it is being addressed in the third offset.
Thank you. Now you mentioned cyber. There are a couple of those new domain questions, and the implication of this working under a new domain in the U.S.-Japan Defense Technology Corporation. So obviously cyber information assurance is the key area, but then also there's the question about outer space and space assets. How do you see the potential of U.S. and Japanese industry can collaborate in any of these new domain, responding to new types of threats in the areas that we've never really thought that we would have to face? Cyber has been around for a while. I think space has really now come to the fore with all the space assets that we launch in the air, airspace. So welcome any of your thoughts.
Dr. Watanabe is much better than me on the cyber technology issues. He came from that field of the technology. But the important thing that I have to point out is there is another constitutional debate issue related to the cyber technology. That is the secrecy of communications. We had a very difficult debate more than 5 years ago related to the so-called Winnie program. That is a data swapping program developed by a Japanese scholar. That became a problem because you can easily get somebody's assets from their computers to your computers, or just you can have some free release or the careless free release from your computer to others' computers. And this became criminal issues. But the point is, how far you can check and how far you can investigate the whole system, whole transfer of information from here to there. And the Ministry of Communication at that time said very high level of requirements of the secrecy of communications at the time. And this blocks badly about the cybersecurity issues in Japan in general. This will be challenged in the near future. That is necessary because in your country too, wiretapping is prohibited by constitution, but wire filtering is okay. Because filtering is just say very receptive type of checking of flow of communications. But even filtering is not constitutional in Japanese current understanding of the constitution. So this is going to be a very serious, heavy challenge for us in the near future. And once we can find a good and say progressive answer to this question, we can find more occasions of the cooperation. But the detail is Dr. Watanabe's. Thank you.
Dr. Watanabe, so I think we're waiting for the details from you.
ちょっと今のですね、運用的なものとですね、それから装備の話と2つありまして、運用的なものとはちょっと、装備庁というよりは全体の話になりますので、そこよりもちょっとフォーカスは装備ということに関してちょっと申し上げます。装備の方もですね、かなりいろいろ問題があると。これはケンドール次官ともお話をして、非常にその点をケンドール次官はご心配されていて、これに対してどういう対処をしているかということは、T&L の方もですね、相当真剣に議論しているということなんですけど、それは何かと言いますとですね、従来装備の関係で、非に指定している部分、 それ以外の部分とこうあるんですけども、非にしている部分というのはちゃんと守られてもですね、非に指定していない部分というのは必ずしもよく守られていないんですね。でこれはやっぱり必ずしも守られなくても大丈夫だからということで非にしていないということなんですけども、日米これ同じようなことなんですけども、非にしてない部分がたとえ、あったとしてもそれが全部リークしてしまうとですね、相当な情報量になるんでですね、これをどういうふうにコントロールしていくかというのは大きな課題になっています。これはまたしっかりとですね守る必要があるということで厳正にやりますとですね、これはこれでまた、サプライチェーンの関係で非常にやりにくいっていうんですかね、非常に難しいコントロールをしなきゃいけないということになりますので、この部分をどういうふうに扱っていくかっていうのは、多分日米双方とも課題があるんだろうというふうに思っています。それともう一つはですね、もう一つのやっぱり別の問題でハードウェアのセキュリティというのがあるんです。でこれはサプライチェーンのリスクということの中に入ってくるんですけども、ハードウェアの中にですねやっぱり予期してないですね、故障というか、リスクが存在していますと。でそのリスクをどう取り除くかっていうのは普段はですね全く平常に動いていると。しかしある指令が入るとですね突然それが悪さをしてですね情報を持ち出すみたいなことなんですけれども、番号みたいなことでやられると全くその予期せぬ等で来たとしてもそれがわからないんですね。でそういう意味で、こういったハードウェアセキュリティ、ハードウェア、そうですね、トロイの木馬と呼ばれているハードウェアトロジャンという名前のところで呼ばれるものであるんですけれども、これをどういうふうにまた守っていくかというのは、これは世界的な課題でもあると思ってますけど、この部分の対処というのがまだまだしっかり確立されていませんので、それは共通の課題ということで取り組み方をですね、その日米間のみならず、世界的な問題でもあるんじゃないかと思っています。こういったことにしっかり取り組んでいく必要があるというふうにとりあえず思っております。
I just add briefly that I think there's a whole new field that has not been adequately addressed. Maybe the Stimson Center can take it up in cyber confidence building, because increasingly you're seeing allies not sharing information because of a lack of confidence in protocols and structures for sharing. And we don't think about we tend to think about confidence building in the normal political constructs, nation building and so forth. But I think there's a real need to really start thinking through how we give assurances, both in industry, and between industry and government, and between governments and governments, on cyber confidence building. Because to your point, Dr. Watanabe, that is everything we do is going to be dependent on it, and I don't think adequate time has been spent working on that issue.
Thank you. This is going to be the last question. It's going to be a two-part question. So the first question is, obviously, both our governments developed these systems and platforms for the warfighters. And both in the U.S. and Japan Self-Defense Forces, there has been a strong push toward going joint. And then also between the two militaries, there has been a very strong push to do things as joint or parallel, however you would like to call it, politically appropriately. So how do these dynamics within the services will shape and inform, particularly on the Japanese side, the development of the defense technology as we move forward? And to finish off as the very last question, I would like to ask each of you what your recommendation would be. So for Mr. Nishi-san and Watanabe-san, what your recommendation would be for U.S. industry who wants to do more with Japanese companies, the Japanese industry in the realm of defense. And for Brett, what your recommendation would be for the Japanese industry who are interested in doing more in this country. So with that.
Very difficult questions to answer, I'm afraid. But the remarkable case recently is Japanese SDF's headquarters moved from Fuchu to Yokota, just next to the building of the 5th Air Force, in other words, the USFJ, Tokyo. It's just only walking distance. So every day, the commanders visiting each other's office and have a cup of coffee and discuss many things. Not only commanders, but also officers and petty officers. So this closeness actually developed a very good mutual understanding, cooperation, and many issues. Therefore, there will be more chances for us that joint use of U.S. bases and facilities in Japan, particularly in Okinawa, by the Japanese side, and also give more, send our officers, say, not only the liaison officers, but also the embed type of officers, particularly, for example, the PACOM, to plan up the joint operation. This kind of the personnel relations is going to be more important and will be demanded in the near future. It's already started, and we can accelerate this this trend in the near future. And this will be a very important basis for the mutual understanding and the cooperation and the encouragement of the co-development in the future. The FSX was a difficult and a bigger memory for the Japanese side, but at the same time, SM3 Block 2A is a very good cooperation. In other words, the aircraft technologies had a big difference at the time in the late 70s and early 80s. But the missile technologies in 1990s and 2000, it's almost catching up. So this kind of limited difference, or the we can fill the gap if our level is close, and soon we can find this kind of collaboration in the very near future. So what we can do for that, and what I can do for that, it's always difficult issue for me to answer. And I asked by many people, U.S. industry side, military side, and is there anybody who is good at discussing this using a lot of questions. My answer is, okay, come to me. I'm going to discuss it with you. Because you have so many questions and very difficult to sort out who is going to be the best guy for you to consult with. So sometimes your questions are mixed, sometimes say random. So what necessary is to sort out that what you'd like to do from the Japanese perspective, and how to meet your understanding and our understanding in a very, say, square way. That is the necessary first step. And that is why I'm coming here and going back to Japan and coming back here again. And I'm just trying to be a man of the intermediate and filling the gap type of person. And there will be much more, so many numbers of this type of people who can fill the gap between the US and Japan. Not only the military issues, but also other issues. So this is my, say, very private answer to your question. Thank you.
はい、私の方からは、自衛隊の方もですね、海外のものからですね、やはりその非常に、いろいろな技術をどういうふうにこれからビルドアップしていくかと、装備をですね、しっかりしたものに進むかということで、海外の装備も含めて、いろいろな勉強をですね、もう実際にされてますので、そういう意味で日米間の協力というものというのはもうすでに進みつつあるなというふうに思っています。海外のその、海外というのは米軍の方からですね、装備品についていろいろ説明を受けたり、それからその次に、その使用と導入しようというものについてですね、いろいろな見識を聞くということはすでに普通のこととしてどんどんやられているというふうに思っています。それの中でですね、じゃあ次に目指す装備を、その日米間の協力でやるという方向性もですね、今はだいぶですね、進みつつあるなというふうなことを思っています。それから防衛産業の方に関してはですね、や やはり私はやっぱりサプライチェーンですね、米国のサプライチェーンにもですね、日本の企業が参画できるといいというふうに思っておりまして、そういったことの中で、今回ですね、5月に初めてですけど、日米産業間対話というのをワシントンで開かせていただいて、ここにいらっしゃる方の中でご参加されている方も、たくさんいらっしゃるんじゃないかと思いますけど、そういう機会をですね、今後ともたくさん設けていく必要があるというふうに思っています。これはやっぱり総務長の役割ってそこにあるなというふうに思ってますので、それをですね、いろんな機会を捉えて、こちらからの技術も発信していくし、それからそういう国際装備店などのところにも参加してですね、いろいろな情報収集するということをですね、数多くやっていくということだと思っています。この中で、お互いの対話の機会を増やしていくということをですね、私どもも、それの機会の増大というんですかね、そういうものに努めていきたいというふうに思っています。はい。
Last but not least,
I'd start with the first question, but I wouldn't ask it of Japanese industry. I'd ask it of the U.S. industry. The future of the relationship, and this is where the opportunity for third offset, I think, is very important. The future of the relationship is not selling U.S. products. And we are still in that mindset of selling products that were developed here. The capabilities that we can take advantage of Japanese industry, if we just reset expectations of the relationship, are so tremendous and would add value to both sides. But it's a different mindset. It means not sending business development people to Japan. It means sending scientists to Japan. So there's a whole series of things, I think, that U.S. industry needs to wrap their mind around about this different type of relationship as we move forward. And I do believe third offset offers an opportunity to do that. And in terms of the cooperative in the program area, I do think we will see, as technology develops, specialization of capabilities. And that's certainly a robust area where, given the limited resources, where specialization of allied capabilities are going to become a very important factor.
Thank you. I would like to thank all of you for very informed questions. Clearly, these gentlemen suffered. So I think we made them work. So thank you very, very much for your very, very informative questions. And I think I hope you can join me in thanking these three gentlemen for their tremendous presentation. For coming again for the first thing on Monday morning. Thank you.
Very, very excellent. Don't forget. Yep.